Good day. My name is Robert Magee. I'm here today to talk about getting started with the Houdini engine for Unreal. This is technology that allows you to work with Houdini under the hood inside the Unreal editor. This presentation is designed for game developers who are new to Houdini, who want to learn about the Unreal Engine plugin that we have for working this way. So the agenda today is we're going to start by talking about procedural assets for artists and level designers. So these are assets that exist that you can use in Unreal to create game art. The second part is going to how you create your own versions of those assets using Houdini and its node-based workflow. And the third thing we're going to do is learn how to install and license the technology and just a little bit about how to set it up properly if you go and work with this on your own. Okay, so the first thing is assets that already exist and how to work with them in Unreal. And we're going to start specifically with a series called the Unreal Starter Kit, which is available on the SideFX website. You go to the Get menu under the Content Library, and this is a collection of assets that each come with a tutorial, and you can learn how to install them and work with them, and we'll take a little preview of a couple of them today. So here we are in Unreal, and there's the Houdini engine menu, which means it's been installed properly, and we start a session there. And then we have a folder here with the starter kit, so I downloaded it and installed it into this project. So here's our first asset, which is a tree. Now, at first you look at it and go, okay, maybe this is just like any other tree. You bring it in, and it's a sort of a static asset. But this is a procedural asset. So what that means is you've got control over different aspects of it. Like, for instance, here, we can grab these points on this curve, and by manipulating them, we can change the look of that asset right here in the 3D view. So the way that this works is that as you manipulate an asset here, under the hood, Houdini engine is processing Houdini and giving you the result that we have here. So this is something that works inside the editor here. It's not a runtime. You don't have the ability to manipulate these things in runtime, but they do help you as you're creating your levels and designing your art. So here you see some parameters that are available. Like, for instance, we could get rid of the leaves and just work with a tree that has the stalk here. So let's go and put another one in. Let's bring in the wall tool. So again, this comes in, looking like an ordinary asset, but we have a whole bunch of options which we can get access to here on the menu, and you can see these parameters here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work with the stones instead of the plain one. Let's go and add a door. So that allows us to put a door into the middle of this. We can change the overall size. So all this, again, you're manipulating it here in Unreal, and under the hood, Houdini is being processed to generate the geometry the way that you need it. So now we're going to go into the border, and we're going to change the border to stone to match what we've been doing, we did with the rest of it. And we don't need it everywhere. So let's get rid of from the bottom, from the right, and from the left. So we only have it at the top and around the door. So all of these options are built into these digital assets to allow you to customize a particular asset to the needs of your game, rather than it being a static asset, which you'd have to go back and remodel if you wanted something to be changed. All of that's here. We can even bend this wall. That's a built-in feature of the asset, and then we can sort of rotate it into place, move it into place, and there we go. We'll have a nice little sort of round wall in the corner. And, as you're developing your level, at any point you can step back and continue to make edits in this. You put it in place, decide, I'd like to make it a little wider, and maybe make it almost as tall as the wall that we have here, and then move that into place. Now, as an Unreal artist or level designer, I'm working with this tool. I don't actually have any idea. I mean, if it didn't have the little logo there, Houdini Engine, the fact that Houdini is involved in this, that's irrelevant. I mean, at the moment, this just feels like I'm working with Unreal. I'm just adding and enhancing my experience in Unreal using these procedural assets. And that's good, because it means that the Unreal level designer or artist is able to use Houdini Engine without changing the way they work. They don't have to learn a new interface. They don't have to learn Houdini at all. They can just take advantage of these tools and how they work inside their more familiar environment. So this is another editor. This is another asset, rather. And what's different about this one is we can actually apply it to something else. So what we're going to do is, instead of having that rock floating in space, we're going to select these 3 pieces of geometry, and they're going to become the rocks. And the rocks sort of go and encompass that. So even though it's positioned over here, it's actually looking at that geometry. So you can have a digital asset interact with geometry that you have in Unreal and have them connect in this kind of way. So that's pretty exciting. So now let's just test the level out, go around, we can run around, and there the assets are. So essentially, once you press play or you turn you build your game, then these assets become baked into the environment, and they work there. That's why when the assets are made, they have to be made using techniques that are game friendly. And later, when we learn how to make our own asset, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things there, things like instancing and maybe some poly reduction, things to make sure that it's game friendly. Also, you can include things like collision geometry and other effects. Now here we're going to take that tree and we're going to bake it. So one of the things is, not only will the assets get baked when you run the game, but you have the ability to say, you know what, I don't need it procedural the whole time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bake it. So you'll have your live procedural one that we're controlling here, and then you have the baked one, which is a little more static. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to bring in a placement tool. So this is another digital asset that comes with the starter kit. And it just says, you know what, I want to place a bunch of objects along a line. So I'm just going to go and fix that line. We're going to move that line over here. And let's move that last corner over here. Now right now, you've just got a bunch of little boxes representing this. So what you're going to do is, let's just change the spacing on this. Let's go more like 3 meters. They're so a little tight. Maybe let's go 5 meters. Great. Now, once we have that, what we have is the instance object. So there's that little box that I was talking about. You can actually replace that with other content. So we can go here to the Houdini engine, go to the bake section, and we can take that baked tree and put it on. And now we have a whole line of trees being manipulated. And along the way, they're being rotated and so on. You can actually go, we probably don't need the original one, just delete the original one. So now we have the baked trees. We have the one live procedural tree, and then we have a line of trees here that you can manipulate like this. You can also control other things like their rotation and different aspects of them along the way. And that's like, if you really wanted to, you could twist them around at the end. Maybe do a full twist, just if it was a different kind of asset, you might want to do that. It doesn't really work for this case, but you've got other kinds of controls. So you can put a bunch of elements along a line, telephone poles or pylons or whatever, and you'll be able to control them using this asset, this placement asset that comes with the starter kit. So you've seen we've got a nice variety of tools within the starter kit. And so anyone working with Unreal Engine is able to use any assets that are available to enhance their game and to help them build their 3D environment. And there we go. So the other aspect of this is, how are these assets created? Where do they come from? How do they exist? So we can take a look at that by building a simple asset. We're going to build this tombstone in Houdini, and we're going to go through a lot of different possibilities of features that you can add to your tool to make it work well within the Unreal environment. Then after that, we're going to build a small little graveyard using a nice variety of those grave tombstones that we build using the initial asset. So if you're going to use Houdini, it's good to understand the nature of Houdini and how it supports us in this process of creating digital assets for Unreal. So the key is that when you do something in Houdini, everything you create becomes a node. And these nodes get connected to build networks. Each network defines a recipe, and the recipe can be used over and over again. And networks can be packaged up into digital assets. So what this means is that while you're working, you create a bunch of nodes and into this network. Is you can package them up into a single node that gets stored on disk in a file called an HDA file. You then build a high-level interface for that by taking parameters from inside the network and promoting them to the top level of that main asset. Then you can take that back into Houdini, and it acts like any other tool. The interface is available, and you're able to manipulate it like any other tool in Houdini. As a matter of fact, a lot of the tools that come with Houdini are actually digital assets put together by the developers. Now, what if you want to go and do the same thing and take one of these procedural digital assets and put them into Unreal? Well, theoretically, that doesn't work by default because Unreal doesn't recognize that kind of asset. So what you do is you use the Houdini Engine plugin. And that plugin allows you to import HDA files or digital asset files. And then the Unreal Engine will present you with the interface, which we just saw with some of those starter kit assets that we created. We brought them in, we imported them, we were able to manipulate them and control their interface. So this is sort of the ecosystem by which these digital assets work. So here we are in Houdini. We're going to start by just building a box. We're going to take that and change its size to make it a little tall and thin. And this will be the base of our tombstone. Now, we go down, here's what's known as the geometry level in Houdini. We're able to select these edges, and we're going to polybubble them. And you'll notice that as we do this, the two actions we've taken so far, the creation of the box and the polybubble, create nodes. And they're there in that network there. And each of those nodes has parameters, and we're manipulating those parameters. And this sort of comes back to what we talked about earlier about this node network that we're going to be able to package up into an asset. So we also put an expression in here to make sure that the tomb is always sitting on the top of the ground. So no matter how tall we make it or any changes we make, it'll always sit on the ground. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to select these two nodes and package them up. So we're going to make a digital asset out of this. We give it a name. Tombstone, we put it into the proper folder. So accept to put that into our project folder. And it thinks about it a second, and then it's going to bring up a type properties window. We won't do anything with that for the moment, but we're going to go and import this asset into Unreal. We're just going to go into the Houdini Engine folder. We can store our assets in here. Import HDA Tombstone, and there we go. Now, when we bring that over, if we were to just click on that there, I've got a nice position there. Okay, if we go and look at that, There are no controls on this. All we see is our transformation ability. At the moment, this is acting very much the same as any static asset you might bring in. To make it procedural, we need to promote some ideas, some parameters from the lower level. So we're going to take this box, we're going to bring the size of the box, because the size of the tombstone is probably a good starting point. And then we're going to bring in the bevel, the amount of bevel that we have there. And we're actually going to change the name of this to corner bevel, just so it's a little more understandable to the artists when they work with this asset. So once we've got that, we see that there's an interface there in Houdini, and we can rebuild this asset here, and that same interface becomes available in the Unreal Engine. If we want to change that to 1.2, that can go up. We want to play with the corner bevel to get a little more like this, and there we go. So very nice, simple control over what's going on. And every time we manipulate the parameters here in Unreal, under the hood, Houdini is processing and giving the result back. So that's a very simple thing. So let's build up this asset, add some complexity to it so we can really get a feel for how far this sort of proceduralism can go in this case. So we're going in and we're fusing the points that we had before. We're now going to add what's called a group create. We want to be able to create a group that's just the front face of this. So we use the normals in the direction of -1, 0, 0 to specifically find that front face. That means it doesn't matter what's going on with this asset. We'll always just find that front face. Now once we have that, when we go to poly extrude, we can go and say use the front group, that one face, and only poly extrude that particular element. So this is how within a procedural network we start to get control, because we narrow things down to what we need. We only need things coming from the front, and then we'll poly extrude that. Now when we poly extruded it, we created a second group, and you can see it here. So we can create a thing called extrude front, and then in this second group here, or poly extrude, we can use that again, another group, so that that's the only thing that we poly extrude. So you can build these relationships within the network to get what you want. Now it's looking like something strange is going on there. The fuse earlier isn't quite doing what it was meant to do, so we're going to go back to that and just maybe tighten that a little bit. 0.01. Yes, there we go. That extrudes nicely. So we have an extrusion and we have an inset. And these are all things that we could promote to the top level of the asset. We're not going to right now, but anything we have in here could be promoted up. And that's part of what's nice about building these assets is you decide what kind of control you want the artist to have. Do you want them to control the size? Yes. Do you want them to control the amount of bevel? Maybe not. Maybe that's something you want to do yourself and you want to just leave that built into the asset. So we're now going to add a second box in. This will be sort of the base of the tomb. And we're going to put that into down there. Now, so we've got the main part of the tomb going above the ground and this part going below. We're now going to merge the geometry and then we'll offset them just a little bit so that the base is popping up from the ground. But we're allowing a lot of the base to go under the ground because we don't know what the landscape's going to be like and where the position exactly is going to be of the tomb when we do a graveyard later. So this just gives us a little bit of something to work with. Now let's save that. What we've done so far, and let's rebuild the asset. And it's only showing the base. Now why is it only showing the base? Well, it turns out that we have our display flag on the wrong node. We have it on that one over there. This is a common mistake while working with assets. We need that to be on the end. But there is a second solution that's important in Houdini, and that is the creation of something called an output node. So what this will do is once you've got an output node, that will always be the output no matter where your display flag is. So my display flag is on the box. It doesn't matter because when I save this, is the output node will give us the proper geometry at the end. So if you're building an asset, it's always good to use an output node to make sure that it doesn't matter where your display flag is. So there we go. That brings us everything we've got so far. The next thing we want to do is just add some more detail into this. Make this a little softer. Right now it's looking a little hard-edged, especially if we're supposed to be an old weathered tomb. So we're going to add a feature in here called attribute noise. Attributes are a big part of how Houdini does things, and we're going to put in a p-scale with an amplitude of 2.2. Now this isn't scaling anything at the moment, but when we go to polybevel here, we can actually use that scaling to help us. And what you'll see is instead of getting a nice straight bevel, you're getting, now we're not seeing the bevel right now because we've got the display flag on the wrong thing, but we'll fix that in a second. So put the display flag on polybevel, and you'll see instead of being a nice even polybevel, it's a little random. Now part of making this look better will be just, let's go in and maybe make a polygon mesh so we got a little more detail. Now when we first do that, it does everything. It polybevels every edge. But you can actually go in and there's an option for getting rid of the flat edges, so we're only doing the corners. Again, this is nice about Houdini. There's these procedural options that just analyze things and get you what you want. So we're going to take that same noise and we're going to add that to the tomb itself. And we copied and pasted what we had before, so we didn't have to do it again. The only thing is these are not the appropriate values for the tomb, so we're going to want to make some changes there. So we're going to change that to maybe 0.012, so it's a little bit less of a polybevel. Change that normal angle so that it flows properly through there. It doesn't do some of those curvy pieces. And let's turn off the display. So that's what it looks like right now. There's maybe a little more detail in there than we would want. So you can go back. And again, this is what's nice about the procedural networks of Houdini. You can go and change that, change the amplitude, and you can change the number of divisions to 1. And there you go. So now you've got your that set up. It's a little softer, a little more round. And if we save that asset, we can go back to Unreal and just see what that feels like there. And there we go. It's a little softer, and that's working a little better for us. And we just change that to make that a little more round. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to add a material. So we're going to take one of these starter content, some poured concrete, and put that on there. And actually, I don't think that's the right place. The right place to put it would be, if you're looking at the tombstone here, there's a place for a material there. So let's just put that in there. Now, once we have that, we should see a material, but we don't. And the reason is we don't have UVs. So we can continue to further enhance this asset by adding UVs right here into the network method for creating them. So we're going to add a normal just to make sure the normals are good on this particular asset. Then we're going to do an auto seam. And so there's the UVs. There's nothing right now, but we've created some seams on the geometry. And those seams will allow us to break up the geometry. Now, it's not using the seams right now. The seams generated a group called seams, and we just got to select that. There we go. That breaks that down a little bit more. And then we can redistribute the parts using a UV layout node. And we'll just change that to by island position, and we get a nice UV distribution there. And we're going to go save the asset. And we can go to Unreal, and when we rebuild the asset now, you'll see that the material looks proper because it's taking advantage of the UVs that were part of that texture. So everything you need to do within a procedural asset, set up your UVs, things that are necessary for your game art to work inside the game editor, those can be built here into the asset. And they are procedural. So as this tomb, if you change the parameters and it gets bigger or changes shape or whatever, those things will update. So we're going to add another feature into this, and this is where we can show how the tool can can offer you different options. So we're going to put a plane in and we're going to cut the tomb, make it cracked. Assume it's an old graveyard. Some of these pieces are old. And so this grid, we're going to take that and we're going to do something called match size, where we actually put it right in the middle of that object. So they're connected in that way. Then we're going to put a mountain node on, and that mountain node is going to just agitate that a little bit. And then we're going to take a bunch of these nodes, just lower them down. We're going to add a Boolean down, and that will allow us to shatter the piece of geometry. So we bring the mountain into the second, the poly extrude into the first, and we're going to change this to shatter, which just basically uses the one surface to slice it. And then we can feed that back in the network. But before we do, we're going to get a group out of this, and the group will be all the pieces above the line. Now we're going to put a switch node down. So instead of just accepting this option, we're actually going to have it as one way of working. So switch nodes are a way of creating different flows of data that you can work with inside Houdini, and then promoting those up. So if you go to the switch node, you see we can either have it cracked or not cracked. And actually, we're going to just change that to 15. It does not need to be quite as strong an angle there. So you've got a couple options here. You can either have it cracked or not have it cracked. And those options can be made available to here. And you can also control whether you make it available in the user interface. So we're going to put in the select input, and we're going to turn this into, is it cracked? And you can make that into a type. We're going to make that into a toggle. I think that's way down at the bottom. Oh wait, no, before we do that. No, that's what we want. We want to go here, and we want to make that a toggle. And press accept. And so once we've accepted that, we can rebuild this. And inside, you'll see that it looks a little different. You can have it cracked or uncracked. Cracked or uncracked. So that option is there. Now, it turned out to be cracked by default, and the reason for that is the defaults. You can go to here, and the default is 1, which is on. We could make the default 0 and accept that. It won't change it, I think, here because you've already pressed the button. But if you were to totally start from scratch, then it would be uncracked by default. And then you'd have to turn it on if you wanted to have the crack. So there you go. We've made that available as an option. Now, back in Houdini, if we want to, we can add more parameters from this to enhance it further. Let's add a separator in. You can build the UI with little elements like separators and folders. And what we're going to do here is we're going to bring in the rotation of the crack. So just in case you want to control what the crack angle is. And the other thing is using the mountain stop, we can change the sort of the noise or the agitation by bringing in the height from here, and that will be another parameter. So like I said, along the way, anything you think that you might want to give control to the artist when they're working with the asset, you can promote that and have that work. Now, we'll tinker with those features that we've added later. In the meantime, what we want to do is we want to have a bunch of different options for how this particular tombstone looks. We want to have it cracked. We've already figured that out. But if it's cracked, maybe we want to remove some pieces or move the top piece away, or maybe keep it. So we're going to create a menu option of different possibilities. And to do that, we need to create another switch node. And that switch node needs to find the right pieces. So we're going to start with a split node that takes the top of the tomb away. And the split node puts the bottom of the tomb on one side and the top of the tomb on the other. So if we, as you can see with the match size, is the top of the tomb is going off on the right and the bottom's on the left. So we're going to go and we're going to rotate that, let's say 90 degrees. Actually not there, 90 degrees in Z. We're going to position that over here, rotate it a little bit, and push it back. Actually, it looks like it's upside down. Maybe we need to go -90. And then we'll just rotate it like this and have it back there. So it as if it fell off. Now we're going to go in and put another match size down. And in this case, we don't want to center it. Instead, what we want to do is leave X and Z, and we just want this to be minimum, so it places it on the ground. Now, it just occurred to me that this is all happening above, before we move the base, before that transforming. We probably don't want that. So we can wiggle this out of the network. This is some of the flexibility of working with Houdini, and say we don't want to do that there. We want to do that down here. So we're going to split it there. We're going to have the same piece go off, which it's working. It's hitting the ground properly. And then we're going to merge that back in. So there's a couple different ways that we're going to want to merge it in. One is we're going to merge it after the crack. Well, there's a switch node, which is where we're going to have our choices. So we're going to start with one merge, where we're going to merge the original bottom shape and the moved top shape, and that gives us our option there. Now the other thing we can do is so that's the second option. So one is cracked and one is there. We'd like a third option, which is to have it cracked, but not having fallen at all. So we see the crack, but it hasn't either broken off or disappeared. So in that case, there's the one where they're all working together. Now we can change the order here. So there's our three options. So it's either cracked but available, cracked and gone, or cracked and on the ground. And we want to make those available up to the top level. So just like any other parameter, we need to promote this, but we're going to turn this specifically into a menu. And the way we do that is we edit our properties, and we bring another separator over, and we're going to take this switch node and we're going to put it there, and we're going to call this just variants, so we can create different variants of the thing. We're going to use a menu, and 0 is going to, we can give names to this. So 0 is just a straight, everything, it's cracked, but it's straight, it's aligned. Number 1 is broken and gone, and number 2 is broken with the piece on the ground. And there we go. Now we can also take other things here. Now to fully make this procedural, one of the things I'd like to do is we didn't create a relationship between the two boxes originally, and I want to make sure we correct that. So if we were to make this box bigger, the base box would not go with it. So what we're doing is we're going to paste a relative reference. So the size in X of the tomb above plus 0.15 will give us the box below. So they're sized in relationship to each other. Now, it doesn't change anything right now, but if we were to change the width or the depth of the tombstone, we want this base to have the same. So we're going to paste relative reference and plus 0.1. So sometimes you've got to build those relationships into an asset to make it fully procedural, and that's something we forgot to do earlier on. So we build that, and there we go. So now we're going to save the tombstone, and you'll see that we've got our menu here with our variants, the cracked or uncracked option, and this gives us a lot of control over what this asset does. We can go in, rebuild that, and there's that menu. There's the cracked and uncracked, and there's the different. There's the broken with the piece. There's just the broken with no piece, and there's the straight one. So it's got the crack, but it's still aligned. It hasn't fallen off yet. So there we have this asset, and let's just talk a little bit about what we did there. So we just built an asset. So we worked on it on our computer where we had both Unreal and Houdini. We were able to save that to disk and then re-ingest that in and test it out. So we create and test an asset. Now once we have an asset and we feel that it's ready for our game, we can distribute that to other people using Unreal Engine, and they're using the Unreal Engine plugin, and they do not have the ability to run the interactive version of Houdini. They can only run the Houdini engine under the hood, and they can consume these assets that we've created. And this is a big part of the Houdini pipeline. So you've got the tool builders and then the people who consume those tools and use them in their work. And if at any point they say, well, the tool isn't quite doing what I want, they can go back to the tool builder who can update that asset. And when a change is made to the digital asset, those changes will be distributed to everyone who's working with them on the different levels. And they'll have those new features or benefits that have been added to that tool. So the next thing we're going to do is build a little graveyard, and we're going to do that using instancing. So we're going to build an instancing asset similar to the placement tool that we did earlier, but instead of along a curve, we're going to do an area. So we're going to draw a curve to represent an area, and we're going to draw it, make sure you draw it clockwise. Close that and press enter to finish. Now once we have that, we're going to go back to the tombstone. We're just going to borrow the first two nodes just as a temporary representation of what we want to copy. Now when these get pasted over, the because they had channel references in them up to the digital asset, they sort of broke a little bit. So we just need to replace that with the original values, and the same with the poly bevel. That distance was promoted up to the top level. We just need to change that channel reference to just a straight number. So once we have that, we're going to copy to points. So we're going to copy the box to the points, and we're going to use a particular feature called pack an instance. This is the most efficient way and makes it available as instancing in Unreal. And we want more than just 4 of them. So let's add in a scatter and align node here. And this will allow us to do a number of things, get good coverage there. And then we can do things like have different sizes, so we can just have some variety in the shape and size of the tombstones. So instead of us having to do that by modeling different tombstones, the tool will help that with us. We can then get some angle. If it's an older one, they're sort of tilted off a little bit, and we can have some rotation, negative 10 to 10. And that can be all built into the asset and can be controllable. So once we've got this, these features, we're going to just make them into a digital asset, just like we've done before. And we're going to call this graveyard, and we'll just put that into our project folder and accept. Now once we have this, again, we want to promote some parameters, just like we did before. So we're going to get the scatter and align is where a lot of the action's happening. So we can go and promote the various parameters from here. So we're going to bring the coverage over, maybe add a separator. Then we can go focus on scale. And then put the separator back. And then maybe go down to the orientation and grab those things there. So that gives us some good flexibility when working with this in the Unreal Engine. Now the other thing we want to do is we want that original curve to be something that we can manipulate. So we're going to go in and promote that curve to an editable node and press accept. And we'll see what that means in a second when we go to Unreal. In the meantime, you can see here in Houdini, there's all the interface. Now we're back in Unreal. So we're going to take the original tombstone and just push that a little bit to the back. And just let's get a better look at the overall area, because this graveyard asset's going to be a little bit bigger. We're going to import this in. We go and get it and import that in. Now we bring that over, and there we go. So we got this generic tombstone being put around with some varieties, different angles, and so on. And we can take the points of the curve. So we promoted that curve up, and that allows us to take these corners and move them. We can also press the Alt key to add points into the curve and further enhance it that way. So that's a nice feature for creating some interactivity for your game artists or level designers, the ability to work with these curves as an input device. So now we're going to go back to the original tomb, and we're going to bake out a version of it. So you'll see that there's a baked out version that's got the crack, and then we can find it in there. Now if we go to the graveyard, we can go down to, there's an area, well, there's the parameters, so we can play around with various parameters. Maybe we change that to 1.5. So we've got all that procedural ability. But there's the instancer. So we're going to go in and we're going to drag that tomb there. And now we've got the tomb that we've designed earlier now being used in the graveyard. Now what's fun is we can also make more of them. So if we want to play around with the bevel to get a different look, then we can bake that. If we want to create a version that is cracked or broken, we can bake that. And if we wanted to create a version that's baked with the piece, so all those different versions, we're going to make those as some baked versions. And there you can see in the bottom corner that we're piling up some options there. So once we have those, we can go back to the graveyard and we can add different instancing actors. So we can say, you know what, I want a few of them to be like that, and it randomly sort of places the two different kinds that we have there. We can add another one and add some in that have missing pieces, and we can do it again and add there. So we can add, if this is a larger graveyard, we can have a nice bit of variety in the different kinds of assets that are being instanced. And let's take it further. Let's create one that's just normal straight with a corner. There we go, and that'll add some nice variety too. So we set the bevel at 0, and that's creates some more of a straight one. So we add another one, and there we go. So this tool that we built is doing some nice instancing of these assets within the environment, and we can actually play that and just walk around and get a feel for it. And we can collide with them and run around them, and there they go. So we've been able to populate this scene, design this level using a whole series of procedural assets, some of them from the starter kit and some of them that we built ourselves. And one of the fun things with the instancing is you can actually take other things, like for instance this steam here, and if we add in here, we can add that in, and now some of the graves are replaced by a little bit of steam to give some mood to it. Now we're going to reduce some of the other ones out just because then we get more steam. There we go. And now we press pause and we can press play, and there we go. And now we've got everything all set up. A little bit moodier look for our graveyard. Okay, so now you've learned how to use assets, how to make your own asset, but let's talk a little bit about how to get it prepared on your computer. How do you install and license this thing for use in your work? So the first thing you do is log into the SideFX website. You would download the Houdini software. Now you are downloading all of Houdini, but you might not be using Houdini. It depends on what your license is. But Houdini will always be there under the hood when you're using Houdini Engine. When you install Houdini, you've got to make sure you click the Houdini Engine for Unreal option to get that plugin. Now, when it gets installed with Houdini. You got to go find that plugin, and there's a directory there that you have to. It's a Houdini Engine directory that has to be moved into this path for Unreal. So it's the Engine Plugins Runtime directory. You find that, put the Unreal Engine in there, and then when you load Unreal, the Houdini Engine will be there. Now, having the plugin isn't enough. You need a license for it. So you can go to the Houdini Get By and click on the last tab, the Houdini Engine for Unreal and Unity. And in this case here, you just get a free license. And this will allow you to run the asset, run the starter kit tools and so on, no problem. Now, let's go over what your different options are from a licensing point of view. So if you're a commercial artist, you would be using Houdini Core effects to create your digital assets. Those assets can then be run using the free Houdini engine for Unreal assets if you just want to consume the assets. Or the interactive licenses, you can use Core and Effects. So if you're testing the assets or working with them. And the file format, the only file format that's consumed in a commercial setting is .hda. Now we also have an indie version, and it creates a different kind of format called HDA-LC, or limited commercial. And that works with Houdini Indie. There's a free Houdini Engine Indie you can get, and it works in the two of those. Now, when you're working with Indie, you can open HDA-LCs or HDAs run that were created in a commercial, but you can't go the other way. And that's just a protection system within our ecosystem. And similarly, we have the education or non-commercial version of Houdini, which creates .hdanc. Now, in the case of the Houdini Apprentice, there is no matching version of engine that runs the plugin. So you cannot run the plugins with Apprentice. But if you are working with education licenses, there is an education engine license that does work. So there's a little more flexibility there. So if you're a student using the free Apprentice edition, you can just bring your assets into class and work with them there. Again, just to diagram this out. So we talked earlier about the person who creates and tests the assets. So the licenses needed there are either Houdini Core or Houdini Effects. But if you're consuming assets, you can use the free Houdini engine for Unreal. And so, it doesn't matter how big your team is, they can all have access to the ability to manipulate and work with those assets. So that's a great feature right there. And on the indie side, again, same thing. The difference is that when you're consuming the assets, you can only use up to 3 on a team for indie licenses. So it's assumed to be a smaller ecosystem that you're working with. For reference, many of the things we talked about today, if you go to the SideFX website, sidefx.com/Unreal, there's a page that specifically outlines many of the things we've talked about here, shows you where the starter kit is, talks about other connections we have to the Unreal Engine, things like the Niagara plugin for particles and the live link for doing character rigging type stuff. And so yeah, be sure to go there if you want to get started. Well, thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation and got a good introduction into the world of Houdini and Houdini digital assets. The next presentation is going to take this a little further. It's going to stay with the cemetery theme, but Simon Verstrade is going to talk about building game-friendly assets, and he's going to build a larger cemetery using landscape, elements, trees, grass, different kinds of grave elements, tombs, and how to get them all working together to create a bigger experience for developing a game. Again, thank you very much and have a great day.